Many know Rusinga Island in Kisumu County, Kenya, as a place of infinite beauty to calm the mind and rejuvenate the body. With its exotic trees which serve as a heaven for the myriad of bird species, there is more than what meets the eye. Inside Rusinga Island, there is a remote village called Gumba. Gumba is a Luo word meaning a place to relax. With a population of about 100 families, Gumba is a shunned place due to what is known for: prostitution, alcoholism, rituals, blood sacrifice, and all manner of ills. There are so many places like Gumba in the world that get to be passed up by the evangelistic word, maybe because of not being appealing to the eye and the mind of most evangelists.
When we got to Gumba, it was maybe about 10 o'clock in the morning. I remember a taxi driver who took us there asking us, why did we choose Gumba? Nobody comes here. People shun this place. You know, there's so many other beautiful places on Rusinga Island. Why Gumba? I said, well, we were invited to Gumba. I said, well, these people here are into voodoo and witchcraft, and people stay away from them. And then he says, as you see, it has this, it has its own red light district, you know. And the guy who turned out to be the Witchdoctor, the young guy, he ended up being our welcoming committee. So he came, and he was wearing a necklace with a dog's foot pendant on it. You know, the foot was still fresh, and he had it tied around his neck with this, and the blood, and you know, gory, very, very gory looking. Actually, no. Honestly, I felt protected. I knew I was protected by God. I felt that He wanted us there. So as long as He wants us there, He will look out for us. And honestly, it's good that you asked me that question, because no, I did not feel in danger. A van came from quite far, long distance, with the equipment, and we wanted to set up so that the van could leave and go back to where they came from. You know, so we continued. We started getting ourselves together, putting up the stage, setting up the sound system, and we had a big screen to project pictures on the screen and so on. So we were busy setting up our stuff, and they started to play this music. It was, African music, of course, but it was different, you know, it was different.
Wana
And they started dancing around. These drunk guys came around. Everybody was drunk. And we found out later that they were paid to disrupt the meetings. Even while we were setting up, they were paid to disrupt our setting up, you know. And but they were paid with alcohol, homemade brew, beer, whatever. Some of the children especially never saw these projection, you know, these images being projected on screen and so on. And as a matter of fact, we had some movies that we every evening before the meeting, we would show half of the video of different Solomon, Bible themes, biblical themes. And so that in itself, as a matter of fact, it encouraged people from neighboring villages to come as well, you know, to see the screen and listen to the message too. But it was strange to them, and we wanted to see, we were curious also to see how much of what we had to say they would absorb and what they would do with the information that we were giving them. When I first entered the village of Gumba, I was assaulted by the odor. Okay, let's call it smells. At first, one would pass it off as simply the smell of fish. After all, it's a fishing village, but it was not the simple smell of fish. It was more complicated than that. It was more like the combination of smells of fresh fish. Fresh fish being dried, and fish that was caught maybe about a week ago and someone forgot to dispose of it. But a few steps into the village, the odorous concoction disappeared, thanks to the greeting, welcoming, smiling little faces of the Gumba children. The first night, I started to preach, and even before the preaching started, we were showing one of the videos, and I thought it was normal at first. All these insects started coming around. Of course, you have lights. These lights attract them. But by the time I went up there to preach, we could hardly see. The insects were everywhere. They blocked out all the lights. Anywhere there was a light. But the thing is, they were not only attracted by the light, they were just everywhere. I felt them on my face, oh man, it was, you know, it was awful. It was really awful. We had to close up shop the first night. I felt like it was a demonic attack. I felt like it was demonic. Let me use that word. Because they were doing these different things to ensure the members of the people in the village that we would not last. We'd be gone. So I believe they, I don't know how conjured up did some sort of voodoo thing and invited these insects to come. But it was, I mean, we always have, there are always insects, because most of the crusades that we do is usually in the bush. We go to places that other people shun, honestly. So we were accustomed to the insects, but not like this. Not so many insects that would block out the light. It's very demonic. They would somehow, I know this is going to sound crazy to most of the people in the West. This is going to sound crazy. But anyhow, let me go ahead and tell you the story. They would go at night. They would whatever they do and encourage these beasts, these hippos to come around, and they would ride the hippos at night all through the village in the dark. And a pastor told us that he was in the bush one night coming from church, and he went to the African toilet for a short call, as what you call a short call, right? And he said while he was there, he heard this noise and he felt like somebody was looking at him. And he said before he knew it, this big hippo with this kid on it came up to him, picked him up, put him across the hippo, lay down across it, and he said they rode with him through the bush all night. Now that sounded so strange to me. Oh, what are you talking? I mean, you understand? But it's not strange to the people there. They all know about it. They know about these night riders all over the place. One night, I was in my room, in my cottage actually, because we all stayed in cottage then. And it was drizzling, dark night, and the dogs in the yard started howling, not barking, but howling. And I'm there trying to prepare my message for the next day, and it was about 5 or 6 dogs. So I got up and I walked to the window and I opened the door actually to shoo them away. And they all of them turned and looked at me, and then they turned back and raised their head. All 6 of them raised their head to the sky and started howling again. And they would howl and howl, and then stop, look at me, howl and howl. And also they would look down the pathway that leads to the street, you know. So I decided to look. When I looked, let me tell you something. Well, let's say it was my imagination, right? Because it's still kind of hard to believe. But I saw this person, a woman, in the wind and the rain, coming towards me. But she did not look normal. And she's walking towards me, making strides, but not getting any closer. And the clothes blowing in the wind, and she's looking at me, and she's coming, but not getting any closer. So I found that strange. So I kept looking, and I couldn't see her feet, but I see her. She's coming. She's and you know how people look when they're walking. Anyway, so I got on the phone and I called my daughter. She was in the cottage next door, Pastor Beatrice. Okay. So I told her, I said, look down the pathway and tell me what you see. So she went to her window, she says, and she couldn't see anything. The mango tree was in her way. I said, well, I didn't tell her to come outside to look or anything like that. I said, well, I described to her what I was seeing. I said, what I want you to do is start to pray. You pray and pray with all your heart, with all your might. So, and I hung up. When I looked again, the woman was still there, walking, and you know what I did? I closed my books, I went and I knelt down, I prayed, and I got up and went and lay down in the bed. That's how that episode ended, you know. What I thought they were trying, I thought they were still trying to scare me away, to scare us away, you know. When I told the villagers about it the next day, they were laughing. They laughed, but they had an idea. That's when, as a matter of fact, that's when they started telling me about the night riders. after I left there and came back to the States, I got a call telling me that even a couple of the guys who were working with us were night riders. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Demoralize you?
No. I just liked the fact that I was not as scared as I should have been. I didn't have that type of fear. It was just strange to me, that thing with the lady that night. But when God asks you to do something for Him, He gives you whatever you need to get that job done. And if taking away fear from you is what He has to do to help you get the job done, that's what He'll do. He took that fear away from us. Well, every night it grew. More and more people came. That's always encouraging. But there was this young man there. We got to know him later on. He started coming. And he would be up front. And well, it wasn't just him. It was maybe about 3 people who were usually in the background started coming up front. And he stopped wearing that necklace, and he too was up front. I'm talking like from about maybe day 5, you know. And then one of the guys came and asked us to pray for him, and we prayed for him. He said that every night he would listen to the message in his house, in his shack, lay on his bed, and he would toss and turn, but the sound was so overwhelming, and the message was getting to him. Now this guy, it turned out that this guy was a professor, was a teacher in the university or someplace like that. He was very intelligent. And he said he came to Gumba, I think maybe about 2 years or so prior, and never left. Well, I think he said couldn't leave, something like that. And all he does is stay drunk, or what's the name of that drug that kids they chew it, a leaf, the leaf, cut. So he was hooked on that, on cut, and hooked on the local beer. But he said somehow he couldn't leave. I don't want to make it sound too. But when we were praying for this man, from the circle in the back of the stage and stuff, he was in tears. He wanted to leave, but he couldn't leave. Could you imagine something like that? He felt like he was in prison. And that's when I knew that the message was reaching, even if it was only for him. And there was another guy who was always with Bai. He also and by himself. The interest they paid, the fact that they were listening, and it started asking questions, and he stopped getting paid because he wasn't. We were there 5 days already, and we're still here. We're still there, you know. So that's when I felt like we were getting somewhere. When I made the call, Bai came up, the witch doctor. His friend came up with him. The guy who asked us for prayer, he came up, and quite a few people who were in the back. Well, let me jump ahead a little bit. I told you it was about 100 people in the village. We baptized 49 of them. Half of the village got baptized. So I'm coming back now to where we were before I jump ahead. The people, some of the people were angry. That night, Bai said that they cornered him and took him into a room. And when he got into the room, it's a dark room, he just felt blows. They started beating him up in the dark. He knew who it was. He didn't really have to see everybody to know, but he knew at least some of the people. He knew the people who took him in there. And so they beat him up real bad, man. The next day, the day of the baptism, early that morning, Bai's friend, was found dead on the beach. Mysteriously. They said he drowned. They said whatever, but he was found right on the beach dead. And the other guy who had asked for prayer changed his mind. So Bai was the only one who was employed to disrupt us, who stayed, who hung in there. All the other people surprised the rest of the village. Also, they didn't give any indication that they were going to, but when the call was made, and that morning, the morning of the baptism, even more of them came. So it was very successful, the baptism was. Well, if you want to call it being proud, I would say is the difference it made in Bai's life. As a matter, I'm jumping ahead again. Bai goes around village to village preaching the word, preaching the gospel, you know. When he first went back home to his homestead where he grew up and so on, his mother saw him and she didn't even recognize him. He was totally different. He was dressed in a suit and tie and had a Bible in his hand, totally different. His face was changed, back to normal, or better than before, I should say, because she really didn't recognize him. And now he is so active in the church, you know. He's teaching, because he's a very intelligent young man. He's teaching baptizing people. The church has grown as a direct result of his involvement. And when I see him, well, I went back to look for him. That was last year. Yes, last year I went up there. He lives way up in the bush up there. It was different because of what Bai was into before. He was the devil's right-hand man in that village, you know, and now he's God's right-hand man. And his change was very drastic, and as a matter of fact, he said even when he was drunk, sometimes he would pray for help. He thought, ask God to get him out of this situation. The day of the baptism, after the baptism, she was dancing. I never saw her dance before. I never saw her dance. And as a matter of fact, when the other people, the Bible workers and the other people saw her dancing, they all started to dance. You know, I was behind the camera. I was taking the video. But maybe if I wasn't taking the videos, I'd have been in there dancing too. She was so elated.
Gima